What's up, guys? Got a good subject today. So I got a DM the other day from a fighter that messaged me and was saying he trains at a gym, and his coach he has a grappling coach, he has a striking coach, right? And his grappling coach is really good. He thinks in his mind his grappling coach is really good. He thinks that his grappling coach was wrestled in college a little bit and is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He was saying he doesn't think his striking coach is that good, and he doesn't know how to handle the situation because he started off going to both programs and started off going to both programs, and now he felt like the striking coach, he's starting to realize that he thinks he's not that good, and wanted some advice on how to handle the situation and what to do, right? So first of all, I've trained with a lot of different coaches, some good, some phenomenal world class coaches, and some that just weren't very good. And when I say good and bad, we're in the question was asked this way as well. We're speaking from a technique standpoint, guys. If your goal is to be a high level fighter, a UFC level fighter, or have a good pro career, even an amateur career, and stay and win a bunch of fights and stay undefeated, maybe you want to be 5-0 as an amateur and then retire, or you want to turn pro and have a couple fights, or your goal is to go to the UFC or a big organization like that, right? Technique is more important than anything from a coaching perspective. It really is. At the high level, everybody's tough, everybody's strong, everybody's fast, everybody's whatever the attribute they have. They have some attributes getting them there, but the technique is all that keeps them there. So technique is very important. So I always speak about these subjects from a technique standpoint, right? Well, from my experience, guys, I worked with all these different coaches and stuff, and from my experience, and it's not even close. The best coaches I've ever worked with from a striking standpoint were actual fighters. Were fighters that had a lot of fights. Not even MMA fighters, like kickboxing. The best kickboxing instructor the two best kickboxing instructors I've ever worked with had crazy amounts of fight. One had over 100 fight, and the other one had about 80 fights. And a lot of experience for sure. And then the best boxing coach I ever worked with had about 100 or had about 40 professional fights, and maybe like 30 amateur fights, right? So they had numbers. And the reason why I say they were the best coaches, I'm not trying to disrespect any of my old coaches or anything like that. I'm just being realistic. They taught more defense. That's the difference I've noticed between a striking coach and a grappling coach. Is Now, I will say this: the best grappling coaches I've ever worked with competed in the sport. The best wrestling coaches I've ever worked with were high level wrestlers. The best jiu-jitsu guys I've ever worked with were high level jiu-jitsu guys that actually competed and actually trained consistently, right? And I'm never saying that someone who didn't fight couldn't be a good coach, because we've seen this play out many times where they are a good coach. But in my opinion, this is always in my opinion, it's always the fighter more than the coach. If you're a MMA coach and let's say you're a mediocre black belt in jiu-jitsu, and you get a college wrestler coming in the room, you're going to be able to do more with him than you were some kid you brought up from ground zero that didn't come with that pedigree before they met you, right? Same thing with striking. Let's say you're a mediocre Muay Thai coach, but you start training a kid that had 4 years of boxing, that comes to you after 4 years of boxing. You're going to be able to do more with him than you are some kid that you're starting from ground zero if you're a mediocre coach. Now, I like training people from the ground up because I don't have to fix techniques that other coaches. If I don't like the technique and I feel like they haven't been taught the right technique, I have to fix these and break these habits, and that's really hard for coaches to do. And that was my problem coming up as well. Is my initial coach was not a very good boxing coach. Just didn't correct technique. Didn't do was just horrible defensively. Had a lot of fights as an amateur, but not many as a pro, and had a horrible pro record, and it showed in his coaching as well. I would say a lot of guys that don't have great records that fought. And especially in striking, once again, or that didn't fight at all and don't have a bunch of experience. From my experience, the striking coaches that don't have a lot of experience or just honestly have bad records, that it's because when I say they're bad, it's because they don't teach defense. They don't know a lot of defense because they were never competed at a high level, or they never won a bunch of fights and they lost a lot of fights. So from my experience, and I had asked this kid this question if his coach had a bunch of fights, and he said no, he didn't have a bunch of fights. And I said, you're probably not getting the defense you're being taught. Now, the difference between this, you take a guy who trained Muay Thai for 10 years and then he's coaching someone, and then you take the other coach that he has that was a college wrestler, a junior college wrestler, and now he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's competed at pretty much every belt level as well. He's competed at white belt level all the way through black belt level. So we have one guy that's never really fought that teaches Muay Thai. Probably maybe even shows, and a lot of this is your pedigree as far as who your coach is. If this Muay Thai guy that didn't never fight had some world class coach person as his coach, maybe he learned some of these techniques and he does a good job of taking that high level pro system and turning it, putting it into his own mix and making himself a good coach because he started with a good pedigree from a world class coach. But that still doesn't. There's still a lot of variables missing as far as defense goes and stuff like that. From my experience, this is my experience, guys. The D1 or the junior college wrestler that's a black belt now, he has a lot of competition experience. He knows what works in wrestling. He knows what works in jiu-jitsu. And that doesn't mean that he knows how to mix those into MMA. And a lot of this, guys, when you come up, unless you're in a big training camp with like world-class fighters and athletes, you learn how to do this shit on your own. I would go to a jiu-jitsu school and do jiu-jitsu here. I would go over here and I would wrestle with the Iranian wrestlers. Now, the Iranian wrestlers aren't showing me how to do a takedown with a hand setup. I would go to the MMA class and learn hand setups or learn some MMA stuff from the MMA coach, but he's not as experienced as the jiu-jitsu coach. He's not as experienced as the Muay Thai coach. So there's lots of variables here. But from my experience, guys, this is the advice I gave the kid. I said, from my experience, striking coaches that don't have a lot of fights just don't teach you defense at a high level. Not for where this kid is trying to go. He told me his record and everything. He wasn't, I mean, I don't know how good the kid is. I don't know. He said he was 2-0 as an amateur MMA fighter. And he wrestled in high school and stuff, so he had some competition experience before that. So I don't know his background as far as, I don't know if he has potential to go far or not, but he said he was 2-0, and then he's going to get a couple more, maybe 4 or 5 amateur fights total, then he was going to turn pro, and I told him that was a pretty good idea. But I told him, I said, maybe you need to go to a boxing gym and find a boxing coach and work with him a little bit. And then you can branch out. Maybe instead of going to the Muay Thai class 5 days a week, maybe you decide to go, you leave the wrestling, you leave the MMA gym, and then you go to the boxing gym. Now, he said there's a boxing gym within 20 minutes of his other gym. So you may have to drive to multiple gyms, and even in the same day, if you're trying to pursue this at a high level and be a pro. I used to do it all the time. I used to drive for an hour from my house one way to go train with the Iranian wrestlers. Then I would come back 30 minutes and train at another gym that was halfway between the two. And I did that off and on for 5 years. Like there's besides when I was in training camp. But there's several reasons why you may have to do these things. But I would say if you're not getting technique from a technique standpoint, if you're not getting high level technique and you're a good fighter and think you have a chance to go far, this doesn't mean you're a good fighter because you believe in yourself. How are you comparing in the room? Are you able to beat up a lot of sparring partners? Are you able to hold your own with the more experienced people and survive the situation? Are you coachable? There's many variables here. But if you think that you're not getting what you need from a technique standpoint, I would say figure it out. I would say you have to seek other options because you're the one getting punched. You're the one taking the shots. It's up to you to decide. Now, if you choose to leave this coach, they're going to have issues. They're going to be upset. They're going to feel a certain way, and that's okay. And when you lose, they may even wish your downfall to a degree. As bad as that sounds, there's often coaches that do that. But if you leave and go lose, you may think in your mind, oh, I should have stayed over here. Maybe you should have. So whatever decision you make, you're going to have to live with as a fighter. But I wouldn't stay with someone that's not teaching technique at a high level, and specifically technique. If you can't get along with the person, and you argue with them a lot, or you're not trusting their technique, I used to always tell fighters and stuff, go somewhere where you do trust what they're saying. Now, that doesn't mean it's right. That's up to you to decide that, and this is still going to be on you to stay or to leave. But there's either benefits of staying or there's and there's advantages to leaving, or vice versa. There could be disadvantages to leaving when you get out there and check it. And the grass may not be greener on the other side, depending on the town you live in, or how many people are around that are good martial artists. You know what I mean? But just my advice, guys, go where the technique is high level, because in my experience, a grappling coach, the difference between a high level grappling coach and a high level striking coach is mostly defense more than anything. Technique and defense. There's a lot of it's just what it is. There's a lot of people that have never fought that produce high level fighters because the athlete is special. It's always the fighter more than the coach. But unless you're some freak athlete, or have a lot of physical attributes, you're really tall for the weight class, whatever the situation is, whatever attributes you have, you're faster, you're stronger. Unless you're one of these things, staying with someone that's not teaching high level technique is not a good idea, in my opinion. Just my 2 cents, guys. Little long video, sorry. If you're new to martial arts, you're looking for a gym in your area, get my book, The Ultimate Guide to Choosing a Martial Arts School and Instructor. Link is in the description.